The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept, and hold it. May we realize the true mind, the Tathagata. For the last several weeks, we've been very busy getting the word out that one of my students, who is a concert pianist of great note, actually, he's played concerts all over the world, is donating a concert in Santa Fe, the proceeds of which would go to Santa Fe, to Mountain Gate. And Peter, it's amazing reading his history, the awards he's gotten. His education has always been at good music schools, and he's gotten special awards, and he's been cum laude or summa cum laude with his degrees at those places. He was awarded a very prestigious several-year grant to study Chopin's works with the last remaining Chopin expert in Poland. Being Polish by pretty near history. His parents were Polish, and I think his grandparents came from Poland. So he was fluent in Polish. So it was easy for him to function there, so he's also an expert in Chopin. But in this case, he did what he has done a number of other times, and that is he's commissioned pieces to play. And this, what he will be playing at this premiere concert, because he's playing the piece officially at that concert in Santa Fe, was inspired by a scroll that's hanging at the Hidden Valley Zen Center in San Marcos, California, which is very close to where he lives. And he has done Zazen there at Hidden Valley Zen Center and seen the scroll, and he's also heard teishos on it. The scroll reads, "Though the 8 winds may blow, it is not disturbed." Though the 8 winds may blow, it is not disturbed. The 8 winds are the various different mind states, emotions, particularly challenging ones, that can go through our heads and impact our bodies. But then there is something deeper, and well, this is what we're looking for in Zen. This it. It has no name, has no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, and yet it is infused in all things. It is all things. Now that's kind of a challenge to wrap your head around that, but that's not the main point of this teisho. This is just an announcement ahead of time, because we were kind of dismayed that the information that we had put out, the ticket setup we had arranged for that's online, was not getting much attention. The concert is just a week away, and only 5 tickets had been sold, and most of them were for our people here at Mountain Gate. And yet, Peter is an amazing person. He's an amazing person to begin with, and he's an amazing pianist. And in an area of the United States where music is important and often featured, it's kind of a puzzle as to why people would not be buying tickets to that concert. At any rate, the reason I'm mentioning this is to ask everyone who hears this teisho to spread the word. It is going to be at 3 o'clock Sunday, February 16th, 2025, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at the Unitarian Universalist community in Santa Fe. 3 o'clock at the Unitarian, you could call it a church, but they call themselves a community in Santa Fe on Sunday, this coming Sunday, February 16th. Please spread the word. It would be sad if Peter, who has really practiced this for months and months to get it precise, and who actually paid an excellent composer to produce this piece. It's a set of 8 movements. And I hope that at least some of the people that you know would be interested in coming and would do so. It's also a fundraiser for Mountain Gate, and we do need the funds. So even if you don't go, even if you don't live anywhere near Santa Fe, there's an option also simply to donate. Thank you very much for being concerned about this and helping to spread the word. So today is the first day of this 7-day Sesshin in February 2025. And I want to talk about some conditioning that is pretty universal and appropriately so and important, but can backfire in Zen practice. An example of this, not the backfiring, but the conditioning, not the conditioning, the lack of conditioning, actually. There is a woman that I have met who had a kensho, and it wasn't complete and it wasn't sufficient to have her grounded. There is a particular high that comes with kensho, but then we need to bring ourselves back down and live the truth of what we realized, which was so freeing that that's why we got the high in our daily life, including finding and acknowledging places where our conditioning is hampering us, where it's causing us to have a prison, putting us in a straitjacket. So this woman had the kensho, and she decided to test it, and went into a seedy hotel in a bad district in San Francisco. She ended up having to jump out of the second-story window because she was being pursued by 2 men. In that case, fleeing was appropriate, even though entering that hotel was not, or even that district was not. There are times when we don't flee because we could actually get killed fleeing. For example, if you are in the woods, in the forest, and you encounter, say, a mountain lion, and it is protecting its cubs. So you need to back off. If you start running, it's going to be dinner for the mountain lion and her cubs. There's some kinds of bears where you simply play dead. And you don't run, because if you run, most wild animals have an instinct to chase anything that goes fast. But we tend to generalize, particularly when we have had painful situations in our life. And one of the ways we take care of that, because no one wants to feel terror, pain, fear, anxiety to the point where we're going to break down. And yet many of us who've had histories like that find ourselves in Zen practice. And our only recourse in life, unless we've had some really, really good therapy very soon after whatever happened to us, is to shut down. We become, well, when I was in high school, I was called a zombie because I was so shut down because of what had happened in my life or what was ongoingly happening in my life during those years. And we get to a point where we shut out any feelings because they're too much. And then we become afraid of feeling the feelings, even a little bit. And so if there's any danger that we might open to any part of those feelings, the impulse is to flee. It's so universal that Pema Chodron wrote a book about it. It was her first book, and it was called The Wisdom of No Escape. If you are playing dead, I have a friend that was out overnight, sleeping in a sleeping bag, and some animal, he doesn't know what it was, started playing with him in the sleeping bag. He just hunkered down in the sleeping bag, and it batted him around until it finally lost interest. So what do we do? If we have this hard shell of much needed protection, how on earth can we open through our Zen practice? Because our Zen practice is challenging, and at certain places it can be quite frightening. You know the saying, let go your hold on the cliff and leap hands held high into the fiery abyss. That's what it feels like at a certain point in your practice. And I hope I'm not frightening people away from Zen practice by saying this, but there is tremendous wisdom in not escaping this kind of thing. And other things as well, like those bears and the mountain lions. When I was first in Zen practice, I had luckily realized without a doubt that the only thing that would give me any kind of peace or happiness would be to go inward. Everything outside had come to a crash. I had what outwardly looked like a very successful life. I had my own business that was very successful. I was traveling all over the world with my husband, who was a diplomat. We had 2 great kids, and it crashed. We don't know when our life is going to crash or if it's going to crash, but in this case, it crashed completely. And so I knew that there was nothing other than going within myself that would work. So I went to the Rochester Zen Center, started doing Zen practice, managed to, after 8 months waiting and going to every sitting and every training period I could afford, was accepted to live at the center and practice at the center. And that was my aim, because I realized that I would not have the stick-to-itiveness against the fear to do it on my own. I would have to be in a place like the Rochester Zen Center where I would have to go to the zendo, I would have to go to Sesshin, I would have to practice or I wouldn't be allowed to live there. And fortunately, I was able to. But every time there was a Sesshin coming up, I dared not leave the building, not even to go out back into the enclosed garden. Everybody else, because we had only worked to till midday, till lunch on those Saturdays, everyone else would finish and go off into the herb garden a few blocks away behind a museum and just hang out, have a nice relaxed time. But I was so full of terror that I would leave that I didn't even go out the door. And later on, when we had time when we could go away for a week or two, once a year, I went with 3 friends out to Santa Fe and had a wonderful time. But coming back, the panic came back. Far from the Rochester Zen Center. It started coming back. But I knew there was no alternative. And thankfully, I was in a car with 3 other people, and we were all going back. So I was, in a sense, captive, which was a good thing. As most of you know, it's especially helpful to do therapy when you've had a history like that. Trauma therapy. Years ago, trauma wasn't even admitted to. When Bessel van der Kolk finished his psychiatry training and went to work for the VA, they refused to acknowledge any trauma whatsoever. There was not a word about trauma in the library. They did not talk about shell shock. They did not talk about battle fatigue or any other euphemisms. And by this time, people were coming back from Vietnam with serious trauma. Single-handedly at first, he investigated, did all kinds of searches and trainings, learning how to work with people who had trauma in ways that their trauma was not erased, but definitely not in the forefront and no longer operant for them. It's a long haul. It's a very long haul. I had years and years and years of therapy working on my levels of trauma. And today, they don't exist anymore. But I say this because wanting to flee a zendo is close to a universal feeling for people. I am so grateful that I realized that there was no alternative. Even killing myself was no alternative. And stuck it out. Over the years, there have been at least 40 years now behind me doing Zen training in concentrated periods, long concentrated periods. And it's made a big difference. And it will make a big difference with you as well. If you can get over that hump where fear takes over, and it's irrational fear, actually, because you begin to fear the fear itself. But when you walk into it gently, a little bit at a time, with a therapist who understands how to work with this, you will gradually, between the therapy and the Zazen, become more free than you can ever imagine being. It is life-saving. Sometimes life, literally. Actually, I would say literally anyway, because when we're shut down, We don't live life. It reminds me of a rather funny documentary that was done by a Canadian guy who had been hiking through the bush, which is what they call the forest in Canada. And for the past 3 days, he had this eerie feeling that something was following him. Something was watching him. And then he came out of the bush into a clearing, a small open meadow, and there it was, a bear. It was a grizzly bear, actually, which has got a terrible reputation. There's not much you can do with a grizzly bear. If he wants to get at you, he'll do it. They're the more frightening end of the bear family. Polar bears are the same also. They will track people. And he was so stunned that in his right hand he had a rifle. It went flying. He had a knife in his left hand. It went flying, and he fell over backwards, propped up by his pack. And he thought to himself, "This is kind of stupid. How can I play dead, propped up, looking at this bear?" And then something happened. Somehow he got some energy, and he stood up, ready to face the bear. All the fear dropped away. The bear came toward him, put his nose in his chest, bumped him, and went hrumph, and then walked away. But that mind state he'd gotten into, suddenly without fear, was one that he wanted to repeat. And so he got to work, raising money to develop a bear-proof suit so that he could encounter a bear again and have the same experience. Of course, it would never be the same experience that protected, because the experience came because he went beyond any idea of his self, any idea about danger. He let go totally of any ideas. And that's why he was able to suddenly stand up, face the bear, and it worked. But if he were to do that, encased in a bear-proof suit, it wouldn't work. And that's the thing. If we're encased in our own bear-proof suit, shutting down, it's kind of hard to come to awakening. We have to, little by little, melt that suit for that to happen. It was quite comical. He spent a considerable amount of money coming up with these suits, and part of the amusement of the whole thing was how they were tested. In one case, he was on the top of a grassy hill. He had a friend. He was dressed in that iteration of the bear-proof suit. He had a friend hit him with a log. I mean, really whomp him. And he tumbled down the hill. And then another time, in a different suit, he went in and into a bar. and it was a biker bar. And you could see these guys all come racing out to go at him with bats and punches and things. But that still apparently was not good enough for him. So finally, after many, many different versions, he found what he thought would be the perfect bear-proof suit. So he hired 17 guys, sharpshooters. They all went up on horseback to a place where they had heard that a bear was sighted. And the suit by this time was so heavy, it had to be helicoptered in. So there they are. They sight the bear. It's about, 500 yards at least away. And so he takes 2 guys and gets into the bear-proof suit and tries to step forward, falls on his face. They pick him up, tries to step forward, falls on his face. It's clear he's not going to get to that bear. So they give up finally. And the last scene, as they all turn away, is the bear-proof suit up against a tree as it begins to snow. That's about as successful as it would be for us to try to come to awakening without daring to inch out of that protection. And as I said, with appropriate therapy, at deep zazen, searching within, just reaching deep within ourselves to explore and to go beyond where our thinking can even touch, because thinking won't have any positive effect on this except to stall us, and that's not a positive effect. But we keep exploring more and more deeply, and it's like going into this huge room in this huge house that you've never been in before, and it's in a strange country, in a strange architecture, and it's pitch black dark, and you're trying to find your way out, and you keep stepping forward gingerly in case you're going to trip over something, and then you finally maybe get to a wall, and you sort of put your hands on the wall and try to move towards a direction you think there might be a door. You might be knocking pictures off the wall. You might be stumbling over chairs or something. And you keep trying, and you keep trying, and you keep trying, and you get more and more and more subtly aware. And this is important. And gradually, you get to where there's a door. And you open it. And there's a bit more light there. So you can see your way a little bit better. And then it's still not enough, that like having a flashlight or something. And so again, you have to find your way out of that room. And again, it becomes more subtle. The zazen, the search, the inward search. And eventually, you come out into the light. It can take years, which is fine, because every inch of the way, you're getting a little bit more free, even though you don't realize it. A little bit more free. And sometimes you get a sense of where you're caught. And if you turn in that direction and face it, like facing that bear, it's not necessarily as scary. It's sobering, because you don't like to think that you've acted that way or done that thing. But when you open your arms and accept, okay, but I don't want to do it again. I don't ever want to do it again. Then it's as if something shifts. And, well, habit can repeat, each time it repeats, as long as you do that facing of it, accepting of it, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And you find yourself not being inclined to do whatever it was again. Of course, there's a whole host of conditioning, a whole host of things that we would probably rather not recognize that we were doing. But in accepting that, it's amazing what can happen. We become free of it. We become free of it. So it's not like you jump into some heavenly mind state. And if you're doing that, something's wrong with your meditation. Meditation is not about getting into a perfect mind state. It's getting into the search wherever you are. Though the 8 winds may blow, find that it that is never disturbed. It's amazing. It takes time. It's a real test of patience for those of us who are not very patient. It is also a test of how thick our self-made burproof suit is. But it can be done, and it's been done so many times by so many people with such wonderful results. There is tremendous wisdom in not escaping Zazen. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.